Welcome, everybody. I think I'll talk through something that was a real application of the material in a way. So the old house had central air that the owners had put in. I assumed it was going to cool the house fine. Never, you normally test something like that. So we move in and we had a great room like this house, but with less glass and a little bit smaller. So we turn on the air conditioning and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter throughout the day. It's clear it's not going to work. So fast forward to this house, and I talked to central air conditioning people that the builder liked. They're very competent. I had no doubt they could do something that worked. But the problem with this house is even worse. The thermal situation here is profoundly difficult. So we have a tower in the front with glass on 180 degrees. It starts getting hot about when the sun comes up about 6 these days. And by 8 o'clock in the morning, it's warm in there, even in the winter. That opens directly into the great room, which has banks of windows completely on two sides. That opens in turn to another room on the back that's call it the wildlife room. It's another 180 degrees of glass. So it's a see-through house. So the guy looked at the plans from a company. I wanted the mini splits instead of central air for a number of reasons. The first one is that Junko and I are both very, I wouldn't say we're preppers, we're comfortabilists. We want to be sure that no matter what, we're going to be comfortable in this house. And so I looked at these Mitsubishi mini splits, which of course is a Japanese brand. And in Japan, there's two things about a Japanese product. First is that it's going to be very high quality. And secondly, you're going to find that it's going to be very energy efficient. Japan has no natural resources. They import natural gas through liquid reconstitution ports, which makes it probably about 10 times what we pay for it. So it's going to be energy efficient. I found this unit, a Mitsubishi, called the Hyperheat, and it extracts heat from the air to heat the house down to minus 15 Fahrenheit. That's about as cold as it ever normally gets here. So it operates with an enormous efficiency, and so it cools similarly. So I thought that's the way to do this. So I found two people to sell them, and the one person was a place we'd bought them from before the old house had similar units. But it's basically a remodeling contractor. They don't usually do new home construction, so they're not very good at this. And I talked some more to the guy the builder wanted, and I found it's usually much more advantageous to go with the builder's people. They're typically people he's worked with for 10 years or so, 15 years, know each other. The guy had he wanted to put a two-level system in, upper and down, lower. And I looked at it, and the first thing was they sold a very high efficiency model made in the U.S. And he said it's not reliable. And I thought I believe that the technology for this is something that U.S. companies are not very good at. We're used to wasting energy rather than conserving it. It's sort of our lifestyle. So I got this guy to give us a bid on these mini splits. So he put together a plan, and I looked at it and realized that the guy who did it was a kind of a founder of the company, retiring. I looked at it, and what I was looking for is to make sure that was the latest model, and discovered he'd made some errors in the model number. So I fixed that. And I looked at the way he did it was he had a 30, let me think a minute, a 20,000 BTU compressor running the two mini heads for the lower level, the bedroom and the hobby room, and nothing else. That worked fine. He had a 36,000 BTU unit, which was fully loaded, which had a 6 in each of these offices, which is fine. A 9 in the wildlife room with all the glass. I worried about that, and a 15 in the main room. So I looked at it and I thought, I don't think that's enough cooling for all that. But anyway, so they assured me they've done this hundreds of times, blah, 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 blah. So they put the thing in. and it doesn't work. It can't cool the house. So I looked at this thing and called service. Service came out, and the service guy said, yeah, it's not working correctly, and he did a bunch of things. And the way it works is the compressor goes into what's called a branch box. This is a common thing that the compressor communicates with digitally and sends the refrigerant to one of 4 ports. So it's got 4 ports on this box. I said, I don't think this is programmed right. So the guy says, this is the first time I've had a customer tell me the diagnosis, but I'll take a look. And he gets on the phone with Mitsubishi and said, you're right, the switches aren't in the right place. So he fixed it, filled it up. And what you measure with these is the temperature difference. So the question is, what is the incoming air into the evaporator temperature versus the outgoing? We measured it was 30 degrees and it felt like icy air coming out. All looked good. So he leaves. Guy comes. So I learned that the proper functioning is between 20 and 30. And if you can get 25 degrees, it's pretty good. So I start measuring with the meat thermometer, and it's measuring 25 degrees, but it's hot still. So I call up the guy. Next day, a tech comes out. The techs are good people. So I said, it's got a delta T of 25 degrees. So you've got a capacity problem. So he starts looking at how he can put another unit in on the same branch box. So the first thought I had is that you could put a bigger evaporator on the compressor. It turns out you can overload these compressors by 30%. And that would have been a cheap, easy solution, just change that out. But the problem is what are called the line sets, the things that feed it are different diameter for a bigger unit. Have to chop the wall open everywhere. We don't want to do that. Can't put the idea of putting it up over the kitchen cabinets, another unit there. I didn't like that because it's hard to get to, yada, yada, yada. So I sent him an email about the guy. The guy and I became pretty good friends after multiple visits out here. So I had his email address. I sent him an email with why I didn't like his idea. And I get a call from the operations manager of the company, a guy named Jason. So Jason starts to piss me off royally. The first thing he says is, it's designed properly. You moved it to a different wall, and that's the problem. And I said, look, I'm a physicist. That's a bunch of bullshit. You're not going to fool me with that. It's a total heat problem. That's nonsense. Then he says, well, we modeled it with 2 models and it's designed correctly. There's no problem with the design. I don't know what your problem is. So I got interested in this, and it turns out that there's a energy report before this I'd looked at called the HERS report that rates the house, and it puts a number on the house. And the county we are in requires a score of 39 or lower. And basically that defines how big the solar panels are going to be. So we measured it with 7 kilowatt solar panels and it passed. I decided I wanted all the solar power I could get. So I found a system that would do 12. And the HERS number came in minus 4, which means the house is net energy positive. So that's not the problem. So then I looked at, there's a thing called the Manual J I never paid much attention to, that is a room by room loading. So that's a model like they use. Look at the Manual J, what it said. And according to that model, the system they put in is fine. So I looked at it a little more. And what I realized, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm realizing there's no diurnal variation in it. And this probably will work on average. If you average over the day, it'll work. So at night, when there's no solar input, it'll probably get the room fairly cooled. And the problem is it can't handle the diurnal variation. The model doesn't account for that. Looked at it some more and I thought there's something wrong here. Then I realized that these models that they use are designed for regular houses. So regular house has rooms with doors, and regular house has relatively small windows. This has a room with 2 big openings onto 2 giant areas that together have more area and more glass than the room itself. So I said, your model's wrong. And he argued with me and we had a sort of nasty conversation. Then he said, well, you're supposed to put window coverings on. And I said, no, I looked into this. You're full of bullshit on this. And it makes me mad when someone misrepresents something to me as supposed to be an expert. I said, that's nonsense. I looked at this, and the models specifically do not include window coverings. You might choose to put them on, but the models don't include window coverings, because if you include window coverings in the modeling, how would you know what window coverings are what? It doesn't make any sense, because different window coverings. So that's not the problem. So I'm getting more and more agitated as this conversation goes on, and it's getting close to an FU moment. And he just says, okay, how about this? He said, how about if we get Mitsubishi to come out? And I sort of thought, Mitsubishi, it's not a performance issue, it's a size issue. But if that's what you want to do, I just said, okay, sounds like that's a good resolution. So a week later, he comes out with the tech that worked on the house and the Mitsubishi guy. And so we walk around the house for about an hour, and they're looking at things. He and the Mitsubishi guy go off and have a little private huddle. And I think what I said to them when they walked in the doors, I said, I think you need a 20 or 24K additional unit with a new compressor. And the right way to do it would be to change out our current compressor for a bigger one. And here I can run the line sets this way in the house and it'll work, but it's a lot of work. First thing is, what do we do with a big expensive compressor we're not using? And if you've done it right in the first place, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, he says you need 24K additional unit. And we'd already looked at this about where to put it. And you can put, the easiest way to do it is to put another whole compressor. Hope this isn't boring, this story. Another whole compressor on the side of the house. And I figured out a way you can put it down low. And I'd put an extra panel in the garage with 100 amps to be able to charge 2 electric cars at a time, which we don't have but one, and we don't run at full power anyway. So, and the guy said, if you put it on the wall, it's going to vibrate and make noise. So I said, if we put it on the elevator shaft, there's nothing in there, and my electrician can put the wire in easily. So we're all set. So now the question is, who's going to pay for this and how much? So meanwhile, I decided to write a letter to them. And my initial reaction was, how'd you dumbasses screw up the design so badly? But I figured that's probably not going to be a useful way to approach this. And I can see that the whole thing is about the fact that they're being defensive about what happened here. I don't think it's even about money at this point. They don't want to admit they made a mistake. So what I did is I wrote a letter to them that described the problem. And I said, basically you did an okay job, and you followed all the rules and you did it right. The problem is that you did this during the time when the house was not yet under construction, and if anybody ever come up here and looked at it, I think you would have seen you had a problem. But instead I said, I'm going to start off with a 4D request. It's not exactly, but it's close. And the most crucial thing is appreciation. So I started off with some authentic appreciation for the company. And then to acknowledge it's a really difficult business environment. And the problem that everybody has is getting enough good people. That's everything that's going wrong in this house is because the people doing the work. Then I talked a little bit about the background that I'm done some important things, blah, blah. And then I talked about some of the problems that happened in the installation because they subbed it out, and just kind of relating facts, and then so forth. And then the whole thing here about the delta T measurements and what happened. And then I said, your people are excellent. And I said, the primary interface with the company is your team. So I made this quite honest, that when they were here, they asked my opinion and they acted on it. They work with industry and competence. I don't know about you, but we don't like seeing people standing around, even if we're not paying for it. It's annoying. And in every case, they fixed other problems they saw beyond what the call was about. They worked together as a team, cheerful, upbeat, and pleasant, integrity, telling me the technical truth, blah, blah. So I said, why am I telling you all this? Is because with the work I've been doing for the past 25 years, the idea of social context fields and leaders set the team. And so I said, this is about you. This is about the social context you set for your company. So I'm impressed. I hold you in this in high regard. So now I've done the crucial part, which is the appreciation piece. Then I go on to tell more of the history of the thing and system testing and why the models didn't work. And I made it, rather than you did something wrong, you screwed up, and emphasizing my annoyance that if they'd ever come on site and looked, it would have been obvious it's not going to work. And the sub, so it turns out these people are, even at this level, very specialized. So I asked one of the techs about something to do with the operation of the unit. He said, we don't know how to operate them, we just know how to install them and fix them. And I thought, first, that's kind of odd. Then I realized the company, it's a small company, and they sell half a dozen brands. These things change all the time. So I made the idea that the remedy is straightforward. It's easy fix. This is no big catastrophe. I think we need at least 24,000 BTUs, and this is how you do it. And I'd prefer you to change the compressor out and put put it like you would have done had you done it right from the start. But I've got a option that works less desirable, but is okay. So I'm trying to put something in here that says you can recover from what happened here in a way that's not very painful and works. I'm trying to give them an easy out here. And then the closing thing was, how bad is it? And yeah, it's intolerable, and so forth. So anyway, that's how I dealt with this. What do you think happened?
I
By the
was
way,
thinking, did they respond yet?
Did you notice the big emphasis on authentic appreciation and what? But anyway, go ahead, Nico.
No, I was just wondering, I'm not sure if they've responded yet, but I think the level of maturity is going to be very important. If he could appreciate the way in which you approach the whole thing, the whole matter, that would be fantastic. And his maturity level could also make him just to respond on your positive criticism or your questions and your input. He can feel threatened. So I think his level of maturity is going to be very important.
But by the way, I did what I often do. I consulted with Frank about this and said, what do you think? And he said, well, why don't you offer to pay half of it? He said, when this is over, you have a much better capability. So let me just talk about that for a second. I've got now a third compressor. We love redundancy. I've got this giant single compressor with short lines, should be highly efficient in the great room. And so what I'm thinking about is when we get into a real emergency, it actually uses, it's a better form of using propane to run my diesel generator and run these than to burn the propane gas. I get more energy out of the propane gas doing that. And the big issue has been, how am I going to cool that great room, heat that great room? Now I've got a dedicated single big unit to do that. So anyway, Frank said, why don't you offer to go half and half? So I contacted the builder and said, what do you think of this? He said, I wouldn't show your hand yet. And I think that's right. So the thing basically at this point is done, I think. So what do you think they did? Do you think they asked me to pay half? What do you think they did? See, you could argue that if they had done the analysis the way they should have, it would have been a bigger, more expensive system. So my first thought was I could argue with them, this is probably about an $8,000 job, something like that. So $8,000 or $10,000 job. So I could argue, and I did the math on this, if they put the system in with a bigger compressor at the start and an additional head, it would increase the cost about 3 or 4K. So I could offer to put 3 or 4K, should be about half the cost. But I decided just to be patient. And so I'm just want you to guess, what was the outcome here? What do you think they did?
So they probably, I'd say they ask you to pay what they were out of pocket.
That would be almost the whole 8,000.
But how about labor?
Yeah, they got to pay for the labor. That's out of pocket, right?
Well, but what I mean is like they would ask you just for the parts that they purchase, the units, the parts, and that, and at the price that they at the price that they get it.
Yeah, that the wholesale price. Yeah, that would be one solution. What do you think they actually did?
Well, by the way you are saying it,
No
they
idea.
I
charge
know.
you nothing or everything.
Considerably less.
Yeah,
They paid it all.
yeah, nothing.
Ah,
Why? Say why?
Oops, sorry.
Hmm?
Did they state why? Like,
I
how
didn't-
did this come to be?
I didn't ask, but I think I think that it's kind of like all the appreciation created a mood they didn't want to break.
Right.
That's what I think. And you know, appreciating them personally, their company. And I think it set a tone to it that they'd rather keep the good tone. That's my guess. And if I'd said what I initially was feeling, you dumb motherfuckers, how could you do this? I think they might have just said, screw you, it's your problem. You know,
Right.
see you in court. Okay. So,
Hmm.
and so I just wanted to show you that two things. One is this is not just academic, stuff works. And take a breath and see what you can appreciate about the thing and go there. By the way, it's healthier for me and them and everyone to do this, to not get, because I told the builder, I said, you know, if they refuse to do anything, we're gonna find someone else to install it, and I go to small claims court and sue them and get my money back.
Right.
But I don't want to really do that. I don't know if you've ever been involved with court things. It's aggravating. I mean, I don't know if it even matters if you're right or wrong doing it, but it's annoying. I mean, it's an adversarial thing. So I took as I sat and thought, you know, what I'm trying to get you guys to do, what can I appreciate about this? And the people who came here to work are excellent.
Yeah.
They're superb.
So, Dr. Pellerin, to try to summarize, so you had the problem and you got to the point where you had figured out at least generally what the solution was.
I think the first step was more important, that I figured out what caused the problem. And without making anybody wrong, I named the cause. In other
So,
words, I could have said, you idiots don't know how to do this. I didn't say that. That crossed my mind. But I said, you know, you did diligent work. You applied the models as you always would. The thing that you missed was this house doesn't match the models.
but you had the conversation, but then you took yourself out of the social context to write the letter. How long did it take from that conversation to when you actually sent them the letter?
Once I hung up, about an hour, you know.
And then you sent it right away, or did you consult with
No,
Frank?
no, I had an earlier version of the letter that I sent to Frank that was
Right.
a very technically detailed thing, and I realized after Frank didn't comment on the letter, but I realized no one's got the patience to go through this, probably, you know. I mean, let's be honest, in today's world, who's not under time stress? So I thought, I just make it simple, and I wrote a second version, and then I wrote, and that was kind of here's what happened. I wanted, what I wanted to do was get out, was not, to me, was most important thing was not to transmit blamer. Because this is the guy who did the work, was retiring. I looked at their website. He's right up there with the owner by himself. I'm guessing he's a revered figure. One of the techs asked me who did the design, and I said so. And he said, oh, he's a good guy. He's the only real engineer in the company. So I thought attacking this guy is going to make them more defensive. So I felt like I needed to provide some explanation of what happened without making them wrong. So I said, you know, I looked at the Model J. If I did the design according to the Model J, I would have done it wrong too. So that was the first step, was to take them out of defensiveness. And that wasn't hard. I actually did that, I think, before the conversation with this guy pissed me off. Then had this very annoying conversation, and I thought, we don't need a Mitsubishi meeting. This is not a Mitsubishi problem. Then I thought, well, just let this play out the way they want it to, because I know the answer is going to be my favor. So then I said, let me write a second letter and send it to the owner, who I've never met, and to set the emotional context of this, try and get confirmation bias, trying to get them to want to help me. That was the idea. So I think it took me a couple hours to get over my aggravation with that conversation, to answer your question more simply. And frankly, I've got sort of time to do things like this. I didn't have to go on to, like some of you, to something else that's in the workplace. I could sort of stop and reflect on this. And, you know, I think that we've talked about this authentic appreciation. For me, it's real. I think if you can practice a state of gratitude and look for, you know, where attention goes, power flows. Look for the good side of the people who are representing the company doing the work, and appreciate them. I mean, that was real. So take your mind into that, and then write the truth.
That was sorry. That was something I would like to emphasize. Appreciation. You know, if it's just words, people will sense that. If it's not authentic, whether that's on paper or in words, people sense authenticity. I believe in that.
So it's like the salesman mantra: authenticity works best when you learn how to fake it.
Don't give yourself away.
I think this mindset of gratitude is the key to everything. If you can live there and take your attention to what you're grateful for. And, you know, if I stop for a minute, I'm grateful for this wonderful house. And we've got a good technical solution that actually makes things better. And the thing that they're not thinking about heating the house, but I am. I end up with a better technical solution than if they'd done it right, frankly. And
Larissa
I didn't
raised her hand.
I didn't tell them that.
We're at 30 minutes.
Was this useful? Does this make sense?
Mhm.
No, this is great.
That's good. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
It's real life, guys. It's not academic.
we
Thanks for
still-
listening. I
Should we get us?
I find that what most people who do this work do is they talk about something they've never done. That was my problem with the business school. I said to the professors there, the problem is you're writing papers about something you've never done. They've never worked in business, to be read by people who are never going to do it, other academics. So
Did you ever run into Professor Rush?
don't
Do you remember
remember. No.
He was my favorite professor because he actually did stuff.
Okay.
But every lesson there was like some crazy story. But he was the exception.
Okay. Yeah, he's the exception, right?
For sure.
I was surprised. The engineering college, because of this put in their own program, their own kind of mini business school. And they had entrepreneurs who'd founded companies in Boulder to run it.
They did.
And they tried to entice me to come join them instead. And the only reason I didn't appreciate how out of touch the business school professors really were. I couldn't imagine that. And secondly, I didn't think, I'm looking to the future here, and I thought an association with an engineering college, when I've got a PhD in physics, is not that useful, but a business school professorship would be something. I didn't know what I was gonna be doing next, but that was the reasoning. So, yeah. So on your feet before Darinka gets us up. Okay, any more thoughts, comments, or questions, and we'll go look at some slides.
Charlie, if I may, very quickly, just a quick question on our agreements. I just want to make sure that we understand our agreements correctly. So you would like, if we have any questions or comments, would you like us to raise a hand? Or you
Sure.
would like us to interrupt? Or you would like us to wait for you when you request for our comments?
I think raise a hand would be perfect.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, because
I-
sometimes we're raising hands and it's hard to notice, so,
I see you on the screen,
all right.
or jump up and do jumping jacks.
So out of the three options, raising hands, interrupting without asking, or waiting for
You,
you,
you can certainly interrupt, but don't interrupt me in the middle of a sentence. That's what I don't like.
sure, sure. So raising hands would be the preferable option.
Interrupt is fine, but if you do, and I ask you, let me finish a thought, let me finish the thought, and then we can go back.
Okay.
Listen, anything's okay. I'm here to help you guys, so whatever you want to do.
No, I'm enjoying it. I just want to make sure. I get very uncomfortable interrupting you. That's why I keep staying quiet, so.
Well, you can try making a raspberry sound if you want, but
All right, okay, thank you for clarification,
It's-
Charlie.
it's whatever. Any thoughts, Darinka? Is this helpful to you?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, what I would say, looking from the business side, if I were to be on a business side of this company, I'd say, okay, well, this gentleman is highly educated. He gave us a chance to design it. He didn't do it correctly. He has a lot of knowledge, so you cannot really tell him nonsense. You really need to have a real story. So that's on a side of respect if they think clearly. On the other side, there's the dark side of business, in which they also probably have thought it through and said, if we go to small claims court, this gentleman, I mean, it looks like he's got some time on his hand. And right, so, and it's highly educated, so he can probably go and make a, like, look at this letter, he can make a good statement in front of a judge. He probably doesn't need to hire a lawyer for this, and he will impress the judge. In the meantime, we can't work. We have to get a lawyer, write all this down with a great risk of losing a lot of money. So, I mean, from a business standpoint, that's another. And the final point is, okay, we actually can get this gentleman on our side, so he tells a good story about us. And he works with our general contractor. So, I mean, there's like, it does make, however you put it, it does make good business sense for them not to charge you for everything, and just to see, okay, well, how do we do it?
Good perspective. Thank you.
So business.
Business, that's right.
Money.
Money.
And if you have a couple, few seconds to add, I just would like to build on what Nico said a few minutes ago. It's not a sales trick. The
No,
appreciation.
I was making a joke.
Yeah, I understand it. But for those who are watching this recording from around the world, there are different cultural approach to that. So the secret sauce for to make it work, it has to be authentic. It
Yeah,
has to come from the bottom of my heart. So
that's right.
you can really pretend, but that pretentious sort of approach being it's not going to work, because as Nico said, and I totally agree with that people can see through you. So, and they really can tell if you are pretending to be a polite and appreciative, or you really are appreciative and really would like to, and if you really mean what you say. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the difference in side note in science diplomacy.
Yeah,
That's what we
Yeah.
teach. The most talented diplomats, they really mean what they say. They're not just using this technique to really
Yeah,
get
that's right.
out of the opponent something that they want. So that's the secret sauce to that. Thank you, Charlie. It's very
Yeah.
important for all of us.
I want to take you back to my story about the police ticket. And the police pulled over the people and the guy tried to get out of the ticket by sort of, doing what I had done. It didn't work. And the young lady who really was able to she'd done probably 10 workshops with me, so she'd internalized the whole thing. So she was able to get the ticket removed when he wasn't, because the policeman saw right through the guy that it was fake. And with her, it was real. And again, I think to live in gratitude and go there and that makes it real. That's mindset is everything, it's back to this mindset. Good. Okay. All good.
All good, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank
Can
you.
I share a quick story?
Sure.
Can I share a quick story?
Yes.
I had to, I mentioned this story this morning with someone else in a conversation, but it's been years in South Africa since I had got a fine. So what usually happens, when they pull me off and the officers start talking and so on, they want to know the clerk and what do you do and so on in South Africa. And the conversation usually ends up in a coffee shop with their children, youth 21, 2019 or so, and talk about, or a conversation about their future and entrepreneurship skills.
Yeah.
It's always an amazing experience for me whenever that comes to be mentioned, what am I doing? Then they will come with their personal request, but are you willing to meet with my children? They don't know where to go. I don't know how many times this has happened, and yeah, it's a meaningful one for me.
Thank you. So these are some slides I made actually fairly recently. Someone asked me about this. The same guy, Paul Hawkins in Australia. So I realized I've never really sort of described a thing, because they're workshop slides, and this is toward the end, so people should know what it is. So I put this little summary together. What's kind of unique about this is it's grounded in first principles, and the concepts are invariant. In other words, they don't change over time. In that sense, the equations of physics don't change over time. Now, some really knowledgeable person might say, wait a minute, Einstein showed that those equations are wrong. No, Einstein showed those equations have to be corrected in cases where you're approaching the speed of light, but they work fine, and they have since 1600s. So everything in this whole thing is, I think, the same way, and I'll show you some of those ideas. I love this expression from Elon Musk: physics is the law, everything else is a recommendation. And then how physics works. First, you make a guess. This is Nobel laureate Richard Feynman. if it disagrees with the experiment, it is wrong. So that's why this is what motivated me to talk about actually using this morning. And everything in here, I've tested it myself, using myself as a test subject. So everything that I'm telling you, I've used. And field testing with clients. So in the early days, I'd put something that I thought was really a good idea in the workshop. And then I would get feedback from clients about, did they use it? First, did it work? And we measured the changes with the online tool. So is it working for them? This is really an experimental physicist approach to life. And the core ideas, human behaviors generate social context fields that affect others, like physical, e.g. magnetic fields affect matter. This is a really core idea here. I think one of the most important things is this is not based in lists. So when I'm doing workshops, strictly overseas, I hear, well, how's this compare with something? How does this compare with something? And DISC is a popular one because it was marketed by Wiley. So I always answered the question, I don't know, I'm a physicist, I don't ever look at other systems, I have no idea about this. After I got the question about 20 times, I decided I better go look. And what I found is everything is built on someone's list. So, and lists don't appeal to me because there's no underlying logic. This system is based on this very simple concept. This is a really important point from my viewpoint. Input and output, information deciding from Jungian psychology. This is the tool that you use to do everything you want with social context. Just like F equals ma, you can do classical mechanics, you can do the calculations to land a person on the moon with that equation. Same thing. This is the key to unlock everything in my view. Simplifies everything into social context, as Schrodinger's wave equation simplifies quantum mechanics. So this may seem an odd choice, but there is a growing viewpoint in some theoretical physicists that ultimate reality is only explained with the wave equations. Anyway, so that's kind of a fun thing to throw it in. Hypotheses that are at the core of this: humans are social, even tribal at their core. There's no doubt about that, I don't think. Social context fields generated by both individuals and group behaviors powerfully influence, well, everything. They are near universally unacknowledged. I only know of one other person in the world who's ever talked about this. This is, in my view, to ignore this is a red risk. A red refers to the project management matrix where you color code risks, and red ones have both high likelihood and high consequence. And if you do project management, you must mitigate red risks. So this is, in my view, interesting because it is, nobody pays attention to them, nobody admits they even exist, and it's high risk. And as I've argued previously, it causes challenges, explosions, the max thing, on and on and on. The 4D system measures and benchmarks social context. So this is important. It doesn't just measure them, it compares them to databases and puts an evaluation on them. And I think the most important thing is has a full suite of remedies, the 10 behaviors, the 8 behaviors. So these are some of the tools. I think the most important single tool is the fast online team assessments. And why? Well, it's a learning tool, and I'll show you that. Benchmark, it tracks progress. So I don't know of anybody else that does this work that has a tool to measure what you've done. And evaluates the effectiveness of it. And I think you should do this with a team quarterly. Now, I used to have this in a very, very complex system, and it was expensive to maintain. It was expensive to host because it was so huge. But more importantly, when something happened, people would call me up, want me to fix it. I didn't write any of the code. It's all written in C++. I don't have any possibility to go in that code and look at all that. So I've got a way you can do it with manually with a Word document that you can send out an email and people can mark up. And then I've got processors that I've written in Excel that are free to everybody. You can do this that way. And Paul Hawkins has a working thing. You can contact him. I think, Larissa, you asked me to do that, you can talk to him about using it. And then this is about the same thing with individuals. Same things, plus this informs coaching. So one of the first uses I made of this, I made the tool for a different reason, actually. I made it, let me back up. I did the concept of benchmarking the behaviors I did for a client because I couldn't convince them to fire somebody, and it worked. So I built an online tool, and a coach asked me, could he use it? Because he had a client that he's coaching, couldn't tell why the coaching wasn't working. And I said, sure. And he did it, the 15-minute thing with her, and said, she's a life habituated victim. I didn't see it because she doesn't bring it to the coaching calls. I know how to fix that. So again, this is data. I think this is so important. The workshops, you learn the concepts. But I think more importantly, within the workshop, and we haven't done that rigorously, but if you were an intact team, we would, they process a real dilemma and come up with a solution. And I think you got to redo the workshop every 18 months. It's not true that you take something as complex as this, that you habituate it after one thing, and find the context shifting worksheet, which some people think is the most important thing I've ever done, some of the coaches. And you can do basically a workshop in 90 minutes and do this whenever you need. And most people do this by themselves once they've gotten this under their belt. So that's kind of a little started overview of the tools this system includes. And then the coordinate system, what can you do with it? Well, you can see the color of your innate personality. And I think we've all started to use that, better understand your needs, values, behaviors, and match the job. I sometimes talk about the fact that I'm a blue. And when I was in blue jobs at NASA, I moved up the ladder very quickly. When I was in orange jobs, I stagnated. So then you can match to the company maturity, project maturity. Interesting thing that entrepreneurial companies have to make this shift, just like projects have to make this shift. And the most impressive example of this is Steve Jobs, that was fired by a board for a company he founded, then came back in a blue job, and the company's got, I think, the highest market cap in the world right now. I'm not sure it's going to last very long because they're so connected to China, but that's another story. Then see the color of other people's innate personalities. I think that's very useful. And that understands their needs, values, future communications. When I do workshops with teams, even large groups, I break them into pseudo teams. We chart the distribution of colors and ask, what are they good to do? And most of the teams that I've worked with have started to take this into account when they hire people, in a sense that they would give a preference to a color they don't have and need. Then finally, you can do your team's organizational color. And the problem with that is that they tend to go all orange because that's what the work environment wants. And that happens if they get too embedded in that, they kill everything else off, the creativity, the caring for people, etc. And then you can, I've talked about this with projects, particularly to ensure the coherence of the project mindset across stakeholders. So for most everything, it's either going to be blue, meaning performance is the deal, or orange, cost is the deal. At least I'd say this is certainly true for major flight projects. As far as my house air conditioner, it's probably orange. I mean, it's got to be done within the cost. And then I talked about this, the projects that I'd been involved with that failed all lacked personal side filling on the 4D system. And so I got to the point where I could go into a team or project and Frank, same thing, make a measurement and say, you're gonna fail and predict it accurately and how to fix it. And sure enough, I could give you anecdotes about this, but it works. Talked a lot about using this to create confirmation bias to gain advantage in procurement. This is my work I did for 7 years at TRW. Again, distribution of the colors of the team. I think this is a really interesting thing to manage your state of being. I've talked about this, and drama is a state of being. So you manage drama with this, but the idea that you can put yourself into whatever state of being you want by simply asking yourself, how are you feeling? What's the storyline that's powering this? And I don't know anything else that will do this. So the point is what a comprehensive and versatile thing this is. Then the AMBR process, I think this is a way to get what you want. Manage your attention, a limited resource. So we talked a little bit about this in the Saturday morning call, talked about watching sports, and I said, I don't bother. Frank spends all day watching sports. My next door neighbor sits in a chair all day watching sports. And I said, the reason I don't watch it at all is I might get hooked too, and I don't want to spend time that way. So I manage my attention to not ever go there, kind of like, drugs. Your mindsets, again, runs green storylines. Behavior, take the action that'll get you what you want. And this will create positive results. Take time to bring your attention to this and restart the cycle. And then the 4D request, which I gave in kind of a rudimentary form. And this is the example I use in the workshop of my boss won't listen to me, which is a thing the only reason I picked this is I pulled it off the screen in a real workshop and began to process it. So you guys are probably pretty familiar with this, but basically you're filling in the 4 dimensions. So that's an overview of what it is. So comments, questions? Was that useful? Good. So in my view, I don't think you need anything else. The biggest thing that sort of aggravates me is people want to start tagging into other things. You can do that, but I think focusing on this works and focus on use it is the best way to benefit from this. And don't let your mind roam into other. If you want to use something else, that's fine. But I think everything that if you're going to use this, everything that you do as a sideline dilutes away from this. And I think this is enough. That's my worldview.
I think my challenge is habituating it. So my brain tends to think in kind of 2 pieces. There's processes, which this clearly has a process.
Yep, it's a process.
There's skills that underline that, and that's where I'm a little weak on both. It's like I haven't fully committed the process to memory. And so these reviews have been really helpful. It's like, that's why I was asking some of the questions I was asking, because I do some of the stuff, then it's like I'll skip steps, or I don't know. My train comes off the tracks. And then the other part of that is like, I haven't built all the skill sets to extract myself from a heated conversation, because I think I'm a little bit like you. I want to throw the kitchen sink at somebody if they're if they want to go down the argument path. It's like, I can live in this place all day.
Right. That's right.
Great.
That's right.
But that's not helping anything.
It's his home territory.
Right. And like, I'm home. This is great. One of the co-founders is a blue. And so I shouldn't say nobody, very few people at the company like going up against him. And I'm like, let's do this.
Let's go.
Tanya's over here going like, oh, he must be talking to David again. Fire, 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 fire. But it's not, that doesn't move the needle. So anyway,
Yeah,
this review has been really, really helpful. And I think I'm also not a checklist person. I'm not logical sequential. Because I think you never, or I should say very rarely, do you insert yourself into a place where you're like, oh, I know exactly where I am. It's usually you have to go through this diagnostic process to say, where am I? And that is one thing that I do appreciate about this tool. But again, trying to get the skill set and the process habituated so that I can yield it in a way that's consistently effective is hard. So, and I know it just takes time, but
takes time.
I'm impatient.
Larissa, you've been at this a while. You think you're habituating this?
Yeah,
Mhm.
certainly. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. It's been very helpful. I'm with you, Charlie, for what, like, I don't know, time is flying, about 12
Yeah.
or 14 years.
Yeah,
My
I think so.
goodness.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess this is finally the time when, so anyway, it's very helpful. It's extremely, really, productive, make my work really very special. Yeah. So you made a huge difference in my professional and personal life. So thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Larissa, regarding
Sure.
that. So you said you've been working with Charlie for now 12 years, or at least known Charlie for 12 years. And then I would imagine it's been an evolution of putting this into your work. Can you kind of look back and see, like, over time, when it was like really difficult, but then you kind of turned a corner and like continued to make progress until you were habituated? I think it'll be different for everyone, but I am just kind of interested to hear your progress, because I think on one hand, it's very easy to say, oh my God, it's going to take 12 years. It didn't. But my guess is it was also an evolution.
Sure.
I'd just like to hear your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. How much time do you have?
You got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So my 2-minute version, what helped me to really dive into the sort of deep end, if you will, it's the necessity that really arises in my work. So I worked with a lot of people around the world. I formed and managed and maintained a number of different, very intercultural, very diverse, very multidisciplinary teams. And I knew that I have a challenge on hand unless I will figure out what to do and how to really approach it. So I guess my answer to your question, just to begin the describing my experience, I was actively looking for methodologies, and I was actively looking for, I formulated the questions, although I was not fully there, and Charlie helped me to really formulate the questions that I need to ask, but I was there mentally myself. I was really actively searching for answers. So in that, really, my commitment and my need, professionally and personally, really was sort of helping me to really to really comprehend the whole system. So if somebody is just casually just like, oh, that's another approach. So casual thing is not the best approach. So if you, I guess what I'm trying to say, if you're in, you're 100% in. That's the key word. So, and I was 100% in, and Charlie really walked me through the labyrinth, so to speak. And I was very privileged to really be there in Maryland in the with the Goddard Flight Center, just together with Charlie, just to see it in action. So despite the bad weather, I don't know if you still remember that very fast snowstorms, Charlie, that we barely escaped. Anyway, that's 12 o'clock, and back to you, Charlie.
I just say, I think you're getting a really much deeper immersion with what we're doing here than almost anyone ever has. This is much better than sitting in a room with 30 people and boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
So stop
Yeah.
and talk about it, conversation. I'm optimistic you're gonna find this is starting to take hold right now.
yeah,
Tanya,
absolutely.
she's already my coach.
Thank you all. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Thank you very much. Be well. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye.